Today, I managed to get 2 writing sessions in, one in the morning and then one in the afternoon. I achieved my goal. My goal for the day was to just make pretty good progress on the ending that I'm writing, which is super vague, but to be more specific, I ended up basically finishing up a chapter that I was on. There was a certain chapter that I've been stuck on for most of last week. Finally got that written. So that particular chapter of my ending is now complete, which is awesome. And so with today being Labor Day, just kind of took it easy in between that. And kind of between my sessions, I decided to obviously go to the gym, just to clear my head. But especially when I was on my sabbatical and now kind of on my days off, I find that if I plan to do 2 writing sessions, what often helps is doing something like exercise in between, because it kind of clears your head. It switches modes completely. It clears your head, and what I find is that it allows me to go back to my second session and honestly come in a little bit stronger. Oftentimes, I think when people do writing sessions, their first session is usually really strong and their second one tends to be not as strong. It takes time to get into the rhythm of the first section, so your first time takes a while to get into the rhythm. But once you're sort of like in your that creative mode there after like the first half hour or 45 minutes, whatever it is, I find that first session tends to be better than the second. And so the one thing that's helped at least kind of equalize that for me is often just exercise in between. And I'll go into my second session, and I don't know if it's because of the oxygen going to your brain or what it is, but it ends up being a little bit just more on par with the first section, in some ways even better. And so today, that was kind of my day. And one thing that was interesting, though, was in between sessions when I was at the gym, a guy came up to me. It was me and a buddy of mine. We were both working out, and a guy came up to us. He's in his, early, mid-40s, I'd imagine. But he looked at me and my buddy and said, "You guys are lucky. You two are lucky. You're doing this now. You're putting up," we were both basically squatting today. So he was like, "Hey, you're putting up, good numbers." I'm not going to say what it was, but like you're putting up, for him, what he saw basically as these really good numbers on the squat at our age. And he says, "I can't do that. Like at the age of 40 something now, I'm not going to try and get up to whatever your number is." And again, I'm not going to say it, and so basically we were like, "Oh man, you got to put the effort in, you to try, don't defeat yourself." I can't remember exactly what I said, but I said something along those lines. So with my buddy. And in the back of my mind the whole time I was saying, "You think what we're doing is good? I'm never going to be able to squat, 700 pounds, 800 pounds, right? I'm never going to get up to that sort of number. I'm never going to get anywhere near squatting 1,000 pounds, just because I started late at this." And so while I was saying that, that's what I was thinking. I was like, "What are you talking about lucky? I'm not lucky at all. Like I should have started this 10 years earlier." And so the point I'm trying to get to is that you're always going to wish that you had started something earlier in life. Especially when it comes to writing, I notice this a lot with adults after, usually when they start getting to like their 40s and their 50s. That's often when I start seeing people start saying, "Wow, I wish I had gotten my MFA, in my 20s. I wish I'd done it, right away. I wish I had stuck with writing in my early years when I had kids and I didn't stop when I had a family and was trying to, focus on my career for a decade and a half, whatever. I wish I had focused on my writing at the same time." And there's all this regret. And what happens is that they always will follow up with, "Now at this point, I don't know, with all of the time that it will take to get good enough to be traditionally published, I don't know if if it's worth it for me. If I go in at the age of 40, all right, maybe it's a decade. And so I gotta basically spend the next 10 years writing until maybe I'm like maybe near my 50s before I get published. I don't know if I can do that. I should have done this when I was younger. And you might think, well, that's kind of a one-off situation. I hear this a bit, and part of it's just because I'm part of a Facebook group that with alumni members of our MFA, with people that are maybe interested in doing it, and it's a pretty common statement. The pretty common statement is, "I'm just too old now. I wish I had done this earlier, and if I do it now, well, it's kind of sad that I had wasted so many years not doing this thing." Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, the reality is there, right? Like, yeah, it's going to take several years, regardless of what age you start. It'll take you several years to get good at something. If your goal is to go into writing, yes, that it's going to take you. Again, I've said before, it takes, better part of a decade probably to get published. If you start getting serious, at least until like year 5. I couldn't imagine someone getting published before year 5 if they just started writing creatively for the first time, at a certain date. I can. It'd be hard for me to imagine someone with no writing experience starting, and then within 5 years getting published, or under 5 years getting published. It'd be pretty difficult. Short stories maybe in some magazines and all that stuff, but a lot of those early years, man, it's tough. It's a lot of struggle, a lot of challenge. I'm sure people do it, but it's tough. I mean, it's a lot of years of just struggle and you write because you enjoy it, but the payoff does not come for a long time. And so when they say this, I get where they're coming from. I understand their position. It's not one that I personally am in, and I'm in many ways thankful for that. But the greater point is that you're always going to wish you had started. You're always going to have wished that you began this journey much earlier. I see it myself right now. Like I mentioned the workout thing. You guys see me on this channel, a little, playing chess on here, kind of as a hobby, right? Yeah. Do I wish I had kind of when I was originally interested in this back in, my early preteens? I wish I had started playing then. Hell yeah, I wish I started playing when I was freaking 5, and now, could be potentially, some, if I put the effort into it, maybe potentially have become some, DM or something like that. Maybe, I don't know. Obviously, this age, it's never going to happen. At 30 years old, the amount of time it takes when you're working, you have your career and you have all these other hobbies in life. Yeah, you're not going to get to the highest echelons of a hobby, especially something like chess. It's not going to happen. Writing, I don't know. I've been at it for the better part of 8 years. I'm hoping to maybe get some sort of success, maybe at some point down the line with this thing, but who knows? And so this video is as much, I suppose, a statement about the idea that we all wish we had started sooner, and that should not be a detriment to you. You should begin. It's as much a reassurance of that. It's as much of us, of kind of telling you, yeah, everyone wishes they began earlier. Just start where you are now. You can't change the past. Go forward. Yeah, that's lovely. But it's also something to kind of reinforce the idea that you need to take action now. You need to focus more on getting in line for that roller coaster now, because the line for the roller coaster does not change. It doesn't, the line never gets any shorter. You just move up the line closer to getting on the ride. It's any hobby, any activity. I mean, it takes time. If you want to, I'll throw an example. If you want to become some, Brazilian, if you want to study like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? It's usually about 7 to 10 years for your black belt. 10 years is more accurate usually for people, but I know some versions of it, I know people have gotten it within like 7 years, but yeah, it's still 7 to 10 years. It's just a matter of when you want to get in line for that. And the sooner you get in line, the better. So with this, if you are, if you're maybe someone that maybe is thinking about getting back into writing, you've taken a break from that, if you maybe are thinking about going for like that MFA, if you are thinking about maybe getting into, you got that novel kicking around in your head and you're thinking about getting back into it or starting, to outline it or starting to go through it, yes, start doing it. You have to get in line. The most important thing is jumping in line for the ride And then from there, just kind of waiting your time out. It's unfortunate we don't find our interests and our passions and the things that we love when we're younger. It's unfortunate that we spend, at least, you spend, 18 years going through schooling, maybe trying to figure out what you want to do for a career. Then you spend another 12 years until you're 30, dabbling in different careers until you find one that maybe you enjoy. And by the time that happens, you're in your early to mid 30s at that point when you finally get settled into a career maybe you enjoy. And yeah, that's it. Yeah, wouldn't that have been lovely if 15 years earlier you would discover this and you were 15 years into the career that you love? Well, that's life. Life is a lot of figuring out what to do and all of a sudden discovering the thing that you want to do you should have done earlier, or you wish you could have done it earlier. That's kind of the paradox of life, really. And so, yeah, get in line. Get in line for that roller coaster. Whatever that is for you, I would tell you, get in line for the roller coaster. It's not going to get any shorter. And by the time you're in line for that roller coaster, you're going to go, man, if only I had gotten in line 5 years ago, I would have been so much better. And I guess the last point to keep in mind is, because this is going to be very specific to writing, is that if you want to be a writer, that has the best entry. Like, that has the best barrier to entry. It really does, because it's not athletics. You don't need to, the guy at the gym that was that started working out, maybe, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, whatever, in his 40s, started exercising weights for the first time in his life. Yeah, unfortunately, there's a thing called father time. Yeah, your genetics wane, your muscle goes, your testosterone levels drop as you get older. Sorry, you're not beating father time. With writing, you're strong. With writing, you can stay strong for a long time. People don't get their Pulitzer, I don't think, until their 50s. I think 50s to 60s is the average age or something like that. People don't write their magnum opus until later in their careers. There are writers that get well into their 70s and 80s and are still putting out these master works. So it's not something where, time necessarily works against you. You're not really worried about too much about any kind of deterioration in that sense. Yes, there's the fear that eventually your cognitive decline will come. Maybe, when you get, hopefully, fingers crossed, maybe that comes very, very late in your life. That's the only thing you have to worry about. That is the one barrier, really. It's just how cognitively, strong you are. And again, for most people, that's a relatively late thing. So if you are thinking about getting into writing, if you are thinking about some sort of project that you've been working on, start it now. Whatever age you are, start it now, because you've got a lot of time to play. I mean, a lot of decades, unless you are in the really late stages of life where maybe that's going to pose maybe a bit of challenge getting published, and even then you should go for it. But if you're in, your 40s, your 50s, even your 60s, get in it, dude. You've got decades left still to do this. And so that's going to be it for me today on that. But again, get in line for that roller coaster. That line never gets any shorter, and only thing that happens is you wish that you got in line a little bit earlier. Okay. I'll see you all tomorrow. Until then, stay safe.